Fabulous ones, it's Prof G, and are you ready to become captains of cloud storage and ladies and lords of image loading? Well, let's set sail for big learning, because in this lesson, we're going to add a horizontal scroll view, which will load up all of the images we've saved in cloud storage for Firebase using the image URLs we've saved to Cloud Firestore. Let us continue to hack. And a quick reminder, if you're new here, you might want to check the ordered playlist so you can see how we got here. So at the end of our last lesson, we got images to store in Cloud Firestore. And let's store a new one just to demonstrate. I'm going to click on the spot for Pino's Pizza, then I'll click on Photo to add new photo. And I've got a bunch of images in here, and I'll select this sad pizza and click on Save. And now when I head over to my Firebase console and I click on Storage, the folder that starts with VKPL is the folder that holds the Pino's Pizza images. If I click on that, I see I have 3 files for 3 images in here, and this third one is the sad pizza. So it's working good. Now to remind you, if I head over to Firestore database, my unique document ID for Pino's Pizza, again, is that VKPL file, so I'm going to click on that. I can see there's a photos collection in here, so I'll click on that. Now, another thing to point out, each of these documents has the name of a file in Firebase storage, but we also saved it with an image URL string, and these URL strings can be used to pull up the image of whatever was stored. For example, I remember that this D05D file here is the sad pizza that I just saved. So with this file selected, I'm going to click on the pencil, then I can go in here into the value and highlight that URL, copy it, and now if I go up into a new tab and paste it in, I can see that I've got sad pizza. So I am going to use the URLs that are in each of these files that allow me to load the image. So we're going to use that with the SwiftUI async image statement that we had learned about when we worked on the Catch 'em All Pokemon app in a previous lesson. So let's go ahead and try this out. And before we write the code to load image, I wanted to make a change to my photo view quickly. I forgot to put a description field in here. Now remember, from a previous lesson, we have this picker is presented set to true, so that shows the picker automatically. I'm going to set it back to false so that I can see the user interface behind the picker view, but I'll put it to do in here to remind me to change this back. And I'll put the text field for the description just underneath the spacer and above the text field that has by and on in it. I'll select text field with a title key and text options. The title key is just going to be the string description. The text is binding, so this is $photo.description. And let's put in a style below this, text field style, rounded border. Predictive code completion wrote this a little bit different than we normally do. You could have used dot notation, but this is going to work fine. We can see the description at the end. It's looking good. Now let's head back to the top where we can set our picker is presented to true again. And now we can head over to spot detail view and start loading our images. Now we want to show a scroll view with all of the images for a particular spot just below this button here. Now we're eventually going to load this data in from Firebase storage, but in order to be able to work with some data in the preview, let's put some mock data in here first. Unfortunately, it's a little tougher to read data in from Firebase storage and use it in the preview. So to create mock data for photos, why don't we head over to the photo class? And similar to the way that we created mock preview data for Swift data, why don't we do that in an extension? So I'm going to say extension, capital P photo, open and close curlies, and we'll also create a static variable called preview. So I'll say static var preview colon, this is a computed property, and it's of type photo with a capital P, open and close curlies. Now the setup here is going to be a little bit different. We're not using Swift data, so we don't create a model container here. We're simply going to create a new instance of photo and have that show up in our preview variable. So I'm going to call that new photo just inside the photo computed property here. I'll say let new photo equals capital P photo. And look, we don't see the option here where we can initialize a new photo value with all of the different properties. And that's because we don't have a photo initializer. All our photo values have default values, but we can change this. Let's create an initializer now. I'll just go below my properties and say init, and I see I've got an option here with all of the different properties in here. I'll select that and press return. And here's an important tip, at least for the version of Xcode I'm using, I've noticed that it doesn't completely fill out all of the different default values that I've set in my different properties above this. Take a look. Can you see in here, there isn't a default value for the reviewer. But we can fix that easy enough. Just after where it says reviewer :string, I'll say equals an empty string. So now that we have a working initializer, I'm going to go back down into the preview computed property we're setting up, backspace over photo and start to type it again, and now we can see we have the initializer with all of these different property options. I'll highlight that and then hold down the option key and press return. I get all of the different values to enter, and if I type Control M, we gave that tip previously, it just formats the different inputs for this initializer on separate lines. Nice. So for ID, I'm just going to put the string 1 in here. The ID property uses string values. These aren't integers. And let's get an image URL that's actually going to show an image. So I'm going to head over to my browser and open up a new tab and do a Wikipedia search on pizza. Wikipedia always has these nice non-commercial images that we can use. I'm going to right-click on the image and then select Copy Image Address. And just to test it, I'm going to paste it into my address bar, press return. We can see that scrumptious pizza. So let's head back to Xcode, and we'll paste this in as a string between double quotes as our image URL string. And you can put whatever you want. For description, I'll say yummy pizza. For reviewer, I'll put in the string little@caesars.com. And for post it on, I'll just put capital D date, open and close parens. So now that we've created this new photo named new photo, we're going to return this, and that's going to be what our computed property is going to be. So we just say return new photo. So every time we refer to capital P photo dot preview, we're going to get this new photo created and returned into the preview variable with all these properties set up. And with that done, let's head over to Spot Detail View to create a horizontal scroll view that shows images. So again, to create a horizontal scroll view of images, we'll use a scroll view, select the option with axes and content. The axes is just going to be .horizontal, content tab over and press return for trailing closure. Then we're going to put in an H-stack, open and close curlies, and in that, a for each statement. Let's select the option with data and content. Now for the data, we usually have an array in here. Let's hard code an array just for now. So in between square brackets, I'm going to say capital P photo.preview to get that preview data that we just set up. And then I'll say comma after this, copy this, paste this in 5 more times, make sure there's not an extra comma at the end. So now we've got 6 copies of the same photo preview in here. Then tab over to content, press return for trailing closure, the identifiable value, why don't we just call this lowercase photo? What we want to do is we want to take a look at the image URL string that's part of each photo element. And we need to convert that string to a real URL. So we can do that with let URL equals URL string. Then we'll pass in photo.imageURL string. And now that we've got this, we can use async image. So I'm going to select the async image option with URL content and placeholder, press return. The URL is going to be the lowercase URL we created above, tab over, press return for trailing closure format. And for the name of the image, why don't we just call this lowercase image? So this will be a full image view that comes back. So when we say lowercase image below, it's like we're creating an image view with capital I image. Why don't we tab down to placeholder, and we'll just put in a progress view in here with capital P progress view, open and close parens. And we see the images started to show up, so we want this to be .resizable, and we're going to say .scale to fill this time, not fit, but fill. So that'll fill up the available space so that there's no white space in the frame that we're working with. Now in order to fill up the whole space, some of the image might spill out as some of the sides of the frame. Now first let's give it a frame by saying frame with a width and height of 80 and 80, but to cut anything off that would spill out, we'll add a .clipped open and close parens below this. And look at that, friends, we've got the scroll view horizontally with images in it, looking good. And just to make sure that our scroll view is always going to be 80 points in height, I'll go to the very last curly in the scroll view, and I'll say .frame, passing in just a height of 80. So now that we mocked up the user interface in preview, let's read in those images using Firebase. First, we got to import 2 libraries, import Firebase and import Firebase Firestore. Now we want to read in all the photos documents in the photos collection for a given spot. Now to remind you how we query data from Cloud Firestore, we can head over to our list view and take a look at that. So we had this handy statement, Firestore query, that was able to get data and put it in an array for us. Now things are a little bit complicated here because we want to go into the spots collection, get a specific spot document, and then inside that document, we want to get all the documents that are inside of its photos collection. So in our spot detail view, we're going to say at Firebase query, open paren, I'll start typing collection path. We want that option with the collection path in here. And now this wants a string, which is essentially going to be the path where we can find the documents that we want. Now you might think, well, why don't I just put the whole path in here, like spots / and then we could use string interp spot.id / photos. Then we can set that equal to var lowercase photos : and that'd be an array of photos, so between square brackets capital P photo. But we're getting an error in here. Xcode says we cannot use instance member spot within the property initializer. Property initializers run before self is available. It might not be apparent from this description, but the problem we can see is the fact that spot.id is underlined here. So when we set up properties, we can't pass in individual variables in here, even if those variables are part of what we're passing over into the setup of this view. So you might wonder, hey, how can we get around this? Let me show you. Instead of putting the larger collection path in here, we're just going to put in spots. Now we are going to use this full path string in just a bit, so I'm going to cut it out. But I'll enter spots with an S at the end. That's plural, all lowercase. Now that's not what we want, but it is going to let us set up this variable photos in here, which is going to be an array of photos, but nothing's in there right now. To be clear, this path is incorrect. There are no photos just within the spots collection. We've got to go into an individual spot document. But once the view loads, we can use our spot.id property. So let's head down to the bottom of the VStack and enter a .task modifier. I'll put mine right at the same level as the navigation bar, back button hidden. Now we know .task is going to fire as soon as the view loads. And when the view loads, well, we will have our spot ID property. So by saying .task open and close curlies, in here, we'll put in some special code to update that path, and that will get the data from Cloud Firestore. So I'm going to say $photos.path and set this equal to, so I'll enter the string, and I copied the path above, that's spots/stringinterp spot ID /photos. Now we will get some grumpiness because spot.id might be a nil. It's an optional value, but if we use nil coalescing with question mark, and pass in an empty string, this should be fine. Now preview is going to crash on us. I'll show you how we can fix that in just a bit. We'll ignore the preview crashes for now, but let's head back up to the for each statement that's inside of the HStack in our scroll view. And we're going to get rid of that hard-coded array that we used. That was the array of the photo.previews, and we just did that so that we could have something to show in our scroll view. But now we're going to get real data, so we can replace this with photos, that variable that we set up with a Firebase query, and then we updated in our .task. Now again, preview is going to crash. I'll show you how to fix that in a bit. But for now, why don't we build and run? Click that play button. Hammer time. No errors. And moment of truth, let's click on Pino's Pizza. And oh, you stylish Swifter. Look at those 3 pizza images showing up in your scroll view. Nice. Let's add another one. Click on that photo button. I'm going to click the square Sicilian slices, my favorite. Now we can enter a description. It's hip to be square. Click on save. And oh, we see 4 images in here. Nice. Let's enter another one. How about this football pizza? Not a real Pino's product. Click on save. Football pizza is in there. Let's click cancel. Head to the list. Click on city side. We only have 1 image in there, but that scrumptious entree is showing up. Looking good. Back to Pino's. All 5 of our images are in the scroll view. That is looking good. Now we're going to get back to showing those mock preview images in the next lesson. But before we do that, I want to show you how we can get rid of this. And in fact, it's not an error. We don't have any error indicators in the upper right-hand corner. So this is just a preview crash where there's no clear error. And when you can build and run and there's no problem in the simulator, it's usually an issue with your preview provider. So what I'm going to do is pass in a new spot, but this time I'm going to put in values for the different parameters. So I'll backspace over. I'm going to select the option where I can put in all the variables in here, hold down the option key, press return. For the ID, I'll pass in the string 1, and for name, how about Boston Public Market, a great place to grab a bite, and the address is in Boston, MA. We see the error goes away. Nice. Now what we'd also like to do is to get some mock data showing up here as well. We have no images here, and unfortunately we can't get them from Firebase, at least not in the preview, but I'll show you how you can mock up more data in the next lesson. But feel good about loading up images, you savvy Swifter. Did you learn big? Well, if so, do me a solid, like, comment, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Make sure you come back, because there's more goodness to come, and continue to hack.